The phone rang at 2:17 in the morning. I know the exact time because I looked at the clock on my nightstand before I picked up. After 34 years of marriage, I had developed certain habits. One of them was checking the time whenever something unusual happened. Another was answering Richard's calls, no matter what hour it was. His voice came through shaky, breathless, with noises in the background that sounded like a hospital corridor. Footsteps, a distant intercom, someone coughing. Olivia, listen to me. Don't talk, just listen. I sat up in bed. The sheets were cold on his side. He hadn't come home that night, which wasn't unusual anymore. Business dinners, he always said. Late meetings with investors. Derek is in the hospital, he continued. He was attacked outside a bar. They beat him badly, Olivia. His jaw is broken, maybe his ribs too. The doctors say they need to operate tonight, but there's a problem with the insurance. Something about a lapsed policy. I don't know. I don't understand these things. You know, I don't— Which hospital? I asked. What? Which hospital, Richard? What's the doctor's name? What city? There was a pause. Too long. In 34 years, I had learned to measure Richard's silences. This one lasted 4 seconds. Enough time for a lie to be constructed. St. Joseph, he said finally. Dr. Morrison, downtown Phoenix. But that's not important right now, Olivia. What's important is that they need a deposit before they operate. The woman at the front desk said they need $110,000 transferred tonight, or they won't. $110,000? I repeated. I know it sounds like a lot, but Derek is bleeding, Olivia. Our son is bleeding. I closed my eyes. Our son. Derek was 33 years old, a lawyer at Richard's company, healthy as far as I knew. I'd spoken to him 2 days ago about Easter dinner. He had sounded fine, distracted as usual, but fine. Richard, if Derek is really in the hospital, I need to speak with the doctor. Put someone on the line. There's no time for that. Just transfer the money to the account I'm going to text you. Do it now, and I'll explain everything later. No. The word came out before I could stop it. In 34 years, I had said no to Richard perhaps a dozen times, maybe less. I had been trained by him, by my mother, by life itself, to say yes, to accommodate, to smooth things over. What did you say? I said no, Richard. If Derek is in the hospital, I'll drive there myself. St. Joseph is 20 minutes away. I'll be there. And he hung up. I sat in the dark for a long time, holding the phone against my chest. The house was silent around me. 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a pool I hadn't swum in since 2019, a kitchen with a marble island that cost more than my parents' first house. All of it paid for by Richard's money, all of it empty. I called Derek's cell phone. It rang 5 times, then went to voicemail. I called again, same thing. I texted him, call me, urgent. Then I got out of bed and did what I always did when Richard left me with questions and no answers. I went looking. The drawer was in his home office, the third one down on the left side of his mahogany desk. Richard called it his document drawer. I wasn't supposed to touch it. In 34 years, I'd respected that boundary. Tonight, I didn't. The drawer wasn't locked. That surprised me. Richard locked everything. His phone, his car, his laptop, even the cabinet where he kept his whiskey. But not this drawer. Maybe he thought I would never dare. Inside, I found a manila folder with my name on it. Olivia Thornton, personal. The handwriting wasn't Richard's. It was neater, more feminine. I opened it. The first document was a credit application dated 3 weeks ago. My name, my social security number, my signature at the bottom. Except I had never seen this form before. I had never signed it. The second document was a pre-approval letter from a lender I had never heard of. They were offering a line of credit for $150,000, secured against our vacation home in Sedona, the home that was supposed to be in my name, the one Richard had promised me for our 30th anniversary. The third document was a police report. My name appeared on page 2, listed as a person of interest in a financial fraud investigation connected to a gambling operation. The report was dated yesterday. I read it 3 times, then I read it again. My hands were shaking when I reached the bottom of the folder. There was one more document, thinner than the others, folded in half. I almost missed it. It was a birth certificate. The child's name was Lucas Alexander Thornton, born April 14, 2017, at Banner Desert Medical Center in Mesa, Arizona. Mother, Vanessa Marie Cole. Father, Richard David Thornton. I did the math without meaning to. 2017, 7 years ago. Lucas was 7 years old. He had been born when I was 51, when Richard and I were celebrating 30 years of marriage, when I was still cooking his favorite dinners and ironing his shirts and pretending not to notice that he came home smelling like perfume that wasn't mine. 7 years. He had a 7-year-old son with another woman, and I had never known. I sat down on the cold marble floor of Richard's office, holding the birth certificate in my lap, and I thought about all the things I had given up for this man. I thought about nursing school, which I had abandoned in 2002 because Richard said he needed me at home full-time. The business is growing, he had said. The kids need stability. You can always go back later. I never went back. I thought about my mother's funeral in 2015, which Richard had missed because he had a crucial meeting in Las Vegas. I had stood at the graveside alone, holding Beatrice's hand, while my sister Marlene whispered to our cousins that my husband couldn't even show up for his mother-in-law. I thought about the $47 million that Richard's dealership empire was supposedly worth, according to the business magazine that had profiled him last year. $47 million, and I had never had a credit card in my own name. Everything went through Richard. Every purchase, every decision, every breath. And now, a son, a secret son named Lucas, with a woman named Vanessa. My phone buzzed. A text from Derek. Mom, what's going on? Dad called me acting weird. Everything okay? So Derek was fine. He wasn't in any hospital. There had been no attack, no broken jaw, no emergency surgery. It had all been a lie designed to make me transfer $110,000 in the middle of the night without asking questions. I texted back, everything's fine, go back to sleep. Then I put down my phone and did something I hadn't done in 34 years. I started to plan. The next morning, the phone rang at 7:45. I was sitting at the kitchen island drinking coffee that had gone cold, staring at the folder that was now hidden in my own drawer, the one in my nightstand that Richard never touched because it contained only romance novels and hand cream. Mrs. Thornton, this is Detective Barbara Chen from the Phoenix Police Department. I'm calling about a financial matter. Do you have a few minutes? I had all the time in the world. The detective explained in a careful, neutral voice that my name had appeared in an investigation involving a guarantee used at a high-stakes poker game in Scottsdale. Someone had pledged my identity as collateral for a $110,000 debt. When the debt wasn't paid, the casino's lawyers had filed a complaint. Mrs. Thornton, do you know anything about this? I thought about the forged signature on the credit application, the pre-approval letter for the Sedona house, the birth certificate with Richard's name on it. Detective, I said, I think you and I need to have a longer conversation. I heard her pen stop moving. I'm listening, she said, and for the first time in 34 years, I told someone the truth. Richard came home at noon that day, looking tired and irritated. He didn't mention the phone call from the night before. He didn't ask why I was still in my robe at lunchtime. He walked past me like I was a piece of furniture, went to his office, and closed the door. 10 minutes later, he came out. His face was the color of old paper. Olivia, he said, have you been in my desk? I looked up from my coffee. Why would I do that? He stared at me for a long moment. I had never noticed how small his eyes were, how close together. After 34 years, I was seeing him for the first time. Someone moved my files, he said. Maybe you should lock your drawer, I said, like you lock everything else. He didn't answer. He went back into his office and slammed the door office. That afternoon, my sister Marlene called. She and I spoke maybe once a month, usually when she needed money or wanted to complain about her late husband's pension. But today, her voice was different, softer, almost careful. Olivia, honey, I talked to Richard this morning. He's very worried about you. Is he? He says you've been acting strange, suspicious. He thinks maybe you should see someone, a professional, you know, someone who can help you work through whatever this is. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. Richard had called my sister, my own sister, and she had taken his side. Marlene, I said, do you remember what Mom used to say about me when we were girls? There was a pause. Olivia, I don't think. She used to say I was the one who settled for scraps. Do you remember that? Olivia always takes what's left over. Olivia never fights for what she deserves. Mom was difficult, you know that. She was right, I said, but not anymore. I hung up before Marlene could answer. That night, I slept in the guest room for the first time in 34 years. Richard didn't come looking for me. He didn't knock on the door or ask if I was okay. In the morning, I found a note on the kitchen counter. We need to talk. Dinner at 7. Don't make plans. I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. Then I picked up my phone and searched for the one thing I'd never needed before, a divorce lawyer. The divorce lawyer's name was Sandra Chen, no relation to Detective Barbara Chen as far as I knew, though I found the coincidence almost funny. Two women named Chen, both about to dismantle my husband's carefully constructed world. Sandra's office was in a building downtown, the kind with tinted windows and a lobby that smelled like leather and money. I dressed carefully that morning, a navy blue dress I hadn't worn in years, pearl earrings my mother had left me, shoes with heels that made my feet ache after 10 minutes. I wanted to look like a woman who knew what she was doing. I wanted to look like someone Richard couldn't dismiss. Mrs. Thornton, Sandra said, after I had shown her the documents from Richard's drawer, what you have here is significant. The forged signature alone is a felony. Combined with the police report and the evidence of hidden assets, she tapped the birth certificate with one manicured nail. You have grounds for a very favorable divorce settlement. How favorable? She smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a woman who had seen 100 marriages like mine and knew exactly how to take them apart. Arizona is a community property state. That means you're entitled to half of everything acquired during the marriage. Based on what you've told me about your husband's dealerships, we're talking about $20 to $25 million minimum, plus alimony, given the length of the marriage and the fact that you gave up your career. $25 million. I tried to imagine what that number looked like. I couldn't. For 34 years, I had balanced checkbooks and counted grocery bills and worried about the electric payment, even though Richard was worth more than most people would earn in 10 lifetimes. He had kept me poor on purpose. He had made me dependent, afraid, small. There's something else, I said. My husband has been paying my sister $4,500 a month for at least 3 years. I found the records in his desk. Sandra's eyebrows rose. Paying her for what? I don't know yet, but I intend to find out. She wrote something in her notebook. Mrs. Thornton, I have to ask, does your husband know you're here? No. Good. Keep it that way. The element of surprise is your greatest advantage right now. Don't confront him. Don't accuse him. Don't let him know that anything has changed. Can you do that? I thought about the dinner scheduled for 7 o'clock. The note Richard had left on the counter, the way he had looked at me when he asked about his drawer. I can try, I said. The house was quiet when I got home at 4 o'clock. Richard's car wasn't in the driveway, which meant he was still at the dealership, or at Vanessa's apartment, or at whatever poker game was going to cost me another $100,000. I didn't care anymore. I had stopped caring somewhere between the birth certificate and Sandra Chen's smile. I went to my bedroom and changed into something more comfortable. Jeans, a sweater, flat shoes. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and called my daughter Beatrice in Boston. She answered on the second ring. Mom, is everything okay? Everything's fine, sweetheart. I just wanted to hear your voice. There was a pause. Beatrice was 27 29 years old, a graphic designer at a small firm engaged to a man named Thomas, who treated her like she was made of gold. She was the one who called me every Sunday, who sent cards on my birthday, who flew home for Christmas even when money was tight. She was also the one who saw through Richard's charm, who had stopped calling him Dad somewhere around her 16th birthday. Mum, she said carefully, you don't sound fine. What's going on? I closed my eyes. I wanted to tell her everything. About the phone call, the forged documents, the birth certificate, the 7-year-old half-brother she didn't know she had. But Sandra's words echoed in my head. Don't let him know that anything has changed. I'm just tired, I said. Your father and I are having dinner tonight. He wants to talk about something. About what? I don't know yet. Another pause. Mom, if something's wrong, you can tell me. You know that, right? You don't have to protect him anymore. My throat tightened. Beatrice had always been the perceptive one, the one who noticed when I was crying in the bathroom, when I flinched at Richard's raised voice, when I stopped smiling at family dinner. I know, sweetheart. I'll call you tomorrow, okay? I love you. I love you too, Mom. Be careful. I hung up and stared at the phone in my hand. Be careful. As if Richard was a storm I needed to weather, a danger I needed to survive. And maybe he was. Maybe he had always been. Richard came home at 6:30, earlier than I expected. He was carrying a bottle of wine, the expensive kind, the kind he only bought when he wanted something. He set it on the kitchen counter and looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. You look nice, he said. I was wearing jeans and a sweater. I looked like I always looked, but I understood the game now. The compliment was a test, a way to see if I would soften, if I would melt back into the grateful wife who never asked questions. Thank you, I said. Should I open the wine? I'll do it. You sit down, relax. He poured 2 glasses and handed me one. The wine was dark red, almost black. It smelled like oak and cherries and something sour underneath. Olivia, he said, sitting across from me at the kitchen island. We need to talk about last night, do we? I know you're upset. The phone call was. It was a misunderstanding. Derek is fine. There was never any emergency. I panicked, that's all. I was at a business meeting and someone mentioned that Derek had been in an accident. And I reacted without thinking. The lie was so smooth, so practiced that I almost believed it. Almost. A business meeting, I repeated. At 2 in the morning. It was a late dinner with investors from Japan. You know how these things go. I didn't know. Richard had never taken me to a business dinner in 34 years. He said I wouldn't understand the conversations, that I would be bored, that it was better if I stayed home with the children who were now grown, who had moved away, who barely spoke to their father. Richard, I said, why did you need $110,000 at 2 in the morning? His face didn't change. That was the thing about Richard. He had learned to control his expressions the way other men learned to control their tempers. Nothing showed unless he wanted it to show. I told you, it was a misunderstanding. I thought Derek needed help. And the police report with my name on it, was that a misunderstanding too? Now something flickered in his eyes. Something cold and quick, like a fish moving under ice. What police report? The one that says I'm a person of interest in a fraud investigation. The one that mentions a gambling debt secured with my identity. The one that was in your desk, Richard, along with a forged credit application and a pre-approval for our house in Sedona. He set down his wine glass. The sound it made against the granite was very loud in the quiet kitchen. You went through my desk. Yes, you had no right. I have every right. I'm your wife. My name is on those documents. My identity was used to guarantee a debt I never agreed to. So yes, Richard, I went through your desk, and I found a lot more than you wanted me to find. The silence stretched between us like a wire about to snap. Richard's hands were flat on the counter, his knuckles white. I had never seen him look at me this way before. Not with anger, exactly, but with something worse. Calculation. He was calculating how much I knew, how much I could prove, how much it would cost him to make this go away. Olivia, he said finally, whatever you think you found, you're mistaken. I can explain everything, but not like this. Not when you're emotional and irrational. Let's have dinner, calm down, and talk about this like adults. I'm not hungry. Then just sit with me, please. The please was new. Richard didn't say please. He gave orders, made demands, issued ultimatum, but he didn't beg, unless he was scared. I looked at my husband of 34 years, at his silver hair, his expensive watch, his hands that had signed away my identity without a second thought, and I felt something shift inside me. Not love, not anymore, not even anger, just a cold, clear certainty that I was done. Okay, I said, let's have dinner. We were halfway through the meal. Salmon that I had cooked but couldn't eat, asparagus that tasted like cardboard, wine that sat untouched in my glass. When the doorbell rang, Richard frowned. Are you expecting someone? I wasn't. But I had a feeling I knew who it was. Marlene stood on the doorstep, her coat buttoned to her chin, her face arranged in an expression of sisterly concern. Behind her, in the driveway, I could see her old Honda, the one she was always complaining about, the one she said she couldn't afford to replace. Olivia, honey, she said, pushing past me into the foyer. I came as soon as I could. Richard called me this morning, and I've been worried sick about you all day. Richard called you, I said flatly. He's concerned, Olivia. We're all concerned. You haven't been yourself lately. I looked at my sister, at her dyed blonde hair, her carefully applied makeup, her coat that I now recognized as new, expensive, the kind she couldn't afford on her pension. I thought about the $4,500 a month that Richard had been paying her. I thought about all the times she had taken his side, defended his absences, made excuses for his behavior. Marlene, I said, how long have you been spying on me for my husband? Her face went pale. What? Olivia, I don't know what your 3 years? 4? How much did he pay you to tell him when I was upset, when I was suspicious, when I was thinking about leaving? This is exactly what Richard was talking about. Marlene's voice had gone sharp, defensive. You're paranoid, Olivia. You're seeing conspiracies where there aren't any. You need help. Help! Richard appeared behind me, his hand landing on my shoulder with just enough pressure to feel like a warning. Marlene, he said smoothly, thank you for coming. Why don't we all go into the living room and talk about this calmly? I don't want to talk calmly, I said. I want the truth. I want to know how long my own sister has been betraying me. Betraying you? Marlene laughed, but there was no humor in it. Olivia, I've been protecting you. You have no idea what Richard has done for this family, what he's sacrificed. If I reported back to him occasionally, it was because I was worried about you, because you've always been fragile, ever since we were girls. Fragile. Yes, fragile. Emotional. Unable to see things clearly. Mom always said, don't. My voice came out harder than I expected. Don't you dare quote Mom to me. Not after everything. Marlene's eyes flickered to Richard, then back to me. In that moment, I saw the truth written on her face. She was afraid, not of me, but of what I might do, of what I might say, of the carefully constructed arrangement that kept Richard's money flowing into her bank account every month. Olivia, she said, her tone shifting to something softer, more pleading, you're my sister. I love you. I just want what's best for you. What's best for me, I repeated. And what is that exactly? Staying married to a man who forged my signature, who has a secret child with another woman, who used my identity to cover his gambling debts. The silence that followed was absolute. Marlene's mouth opened, then closed. Richard's hand tightened on my shoulder. I don't know what you're talking about, Marlene whispered. Yes, you do. You've known for years. You've helped him hide it. I stepped away from Richard's grip and walked to the front door. My hands were steady as I opened it, as I stood aside and waited. Get out, I said to my sister. Get out of my house and don't come back. Marlene looked at Richard. Richard looked at me. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Marlene grabbed her purse and walked past me, her heels clicking on the marble floor. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't look back. I closed the door behind her and turned to face my husband. Now, I said, let's finish dinner. The rest of the evening passed in silence. Richard didn't try to explain. He didn't apologize. He ate his salmon, drank his wine, and watched me with those small, calculating eyes. At 10 o'clock, I stood up from the table and began clearing the dishes. Richard followed me to the sink. Olivia, he said quietly, this isn't over. I know. Whatever you're planning, it won't work. I have lawyers. I have connections. I have a gambling addiction and a secret family. I rinsed a plate and set it in the dishwasher. Yes, Richard, I'm aware of what you have. His jaw tightened. Be careful, Olivia. You don't want to make an enemy of me. I'm not making an enemy of you. I'm leaving you. There's a difference. For the first time that night, something cracked in his expression. Not fear, exactly. Richard was too proud for fear, but something close. Surprise, maybe. Disbelief. You can't leave me, he said. You have nothing. No money, no career, no what? No courage? No options? I dried my hands and turned to face him. That's what you've always believed, isn't it? That I was too weak, too dependent, too pathetic to survive without you. Well, Richard, you were wrong. I'm not the woman you married. I'm not the woman who said yes to everything and asked for nothing. That woman is gone. I walked past him toward the stairs. Olivia, his voice stopped me at the bottom step. Where are you going? To bed. In the guest room, where I'll be sleeping from now on. We're not finished talking. Yes, we are. I climbed the stairs without looking back. My heart was pounding, my legs were shaking, but I didn't stop. I didn't turn around. I didn't give him the satisfaction. At the top of the stairs, my phone buzzed. A text message from Derek. Mom, Dad called me. He says you've been acting crazy. He wants me to come over tomorrow and talk some sense into you. What's going on? I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, come tomorrow. I have something to show you. And I went to bed. Derek didn't come the next morning. He didn't come that afternoon either, or that evening. I checked my phone every hour, waiting for a text, a call, anything. But there was only silence. The same silence that had followed me through 34 years of marriage. The same silence that filled this house like smoke. Richard left for work at 7, as he always did. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't look at me. He simply walked out the door and drove away in his Mercedes, leaving me alone with the smell of his cologne and the memory of everything he had done. I made coffee. I sat at the kitchen island. I stared at the folder hidden in my nightstand drawer, the one with the birth certificate and the forged documents, and I wondered what I was supposed to do now. At 9 o'clock, my phone rang. Not Derek. Juliana, my older daughter, calling from Seattle. Mom, what's going on? Dad called me last night. He said you had some kind of breakdown. I closed my eyes. Of course, Richard had called Juliana. He was building his case, gathering his witnesses, preparing his defense. By the end of the week, everyone I knew would believe I was crazy. I didn't have a breakdown, sweetheart. Your father and I are having some problems, that's all. What kind of problems? I hesitated. Juliana was 30 years old, a high school teacher in Seattle, married to a man named Peter who worked in tech. She was practical, level-headed, the kind of person who believed problems could be solved with spreadsheets and therapy. She was also closer to Richard than Beatrice was, not by much, but enough. I found out some things about your father, I said carefully. Things I didn't know before. Things that change everything. What things? I'd rather not say over the phone. Can you come home this weekend? I need to talk to you and Beatrice together. There was a long pause. Mom, are you sure you're okay? Are you? Dad said you were acting paranoid, going through his private things, accusing him of Juliana. My voice came out sharper than I intended. Your father has been lying to me for years. He has a son with another woman, a 7-year-old son named Lucas. I found the birth certificate in his desk. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. I could hear Juliana breathing, slow and careful, the way she did when she was trying not to cry. Mom, she said finally, are you sure? I'm sure. Oh my God. Her voice cracked. Oh my God, Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't. Dad said I thought. It's okay, sweetheart. You didn't know. None of us knew. I'm coming home this weekend. I'll book a flight tonight. Thank you. After we hung up, I sat for a long time with a phone in my hand, thinking about the conversation I would have with Juliana and Beatrice, thinking about how I would explain that their father had betrayed all of us, not just me, but them too, that the family they thought they had was built on lies. My phone buzzed. A text from Derek. Can't come today. Work emergency. Dad needs me at the office. I stared at the message. Dad needs me at the office. Not I'll come tomorrow or let's talk later. Just an excuse, handed down from father to son, like everything else in this family. I typed back, I understand. When you're ready, I'll be here. He didn't respond. At 11 o'clock, I drove to the bank. I had been thinking about money since my conversation with Sandra Chen. Half of everything, she had said. $20 to $25 million. But that was in the future, after lawyers and courts and negotiations. Right now, I needed to know what I had access to. Right now, I needed to survive. The Bank of Arizona branch on Scottsdale Road was the same one Richard and I had used for 20 years. The manager, a man named Tom Henderson, had been at our wedding anniversary party last spring. He had shaken Richard's hand and called him a pillar of the community, and he had barely looked at me. Today, he looked at me differently. Mrs. Thornton, he said, after I'd been waiting in his office for 15 minutes, I'm afraid there's been a change to your account. What kind of change? He shifted in his chair. He was a small man, balding, with glasses that were always slightly crooked. He looked uncomfortable, which made me uncomfortable. Your joint checking account has been frozen. There's a hold on all transactions pending a review. A review of what? I'm not at liberty to say. You would need to speak with your husband about the details. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Richard had moved fast, faster than I expected. Mr. Henderson, I said, that account has both our names on it. I have the right to access my own money. I understand, Mrs. Thornton, but the hold was placed by the primary account holder. Until it's lifted, no withdrawals or transfers can be made. The primary account holder. I repeated the words slowly, tasting them. I thought we were joint holders. Tom Henderson's face went pink. He adjusted his crooked glasses and looked down at his computer screen. Technically, yes, but Mr. Thornton is listed as the primary signatory on all accounts. He has the authority to place administrative holds without joint approval, without my knowledge, without my consent. I thought about all the years I had signed documents Richard put in front of me. Tax returns, investment forms, mortgage papers. I had trusted him. I had believed that my name on those documents meant something, but it didn't. It had never meant anything. How much is in the account? I asked. Mrs. Thornton, I really can't. How much? He sighed. $380,000. Approximately $380,000. ET? Money I had helped earn, helped save, helped manage. Money that was supposed to be ours. And now I couldn't touch a single cent. What about the savings account? The investment accounts? Tom Henderson's pink face went paler. Those have been restructured. I'm afraid I can't provide details without Mr. Thornton's authorization. Restructured. That was a polite word for stolen. I stood up. My legs felt weak, but I made them hold me. I would not collapse in front of this man. I would not give Richard the satisfaction. Thank you for your time, Mr. Henderson. Mrs. Thornton, if there's anything I can do, there isn't. I walked out of the bank and sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at the steering wheel. I had $43 in my wallet. I had a credit card that was probably about to be cancelled. I had a house that was in Richard's name, a car that was leased through his company, and a life that had been built entirely on his money. I was 58 years old, and I had nothing. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my old nursing school. The woman who answered was young, cheerful, with a kind of voice that made everything sound like a question. Phoenix College School of Nursing. How can I help you? I'm calling about re-enrollment, I said. I was a student there in the early 90s. I had to leave before I finished my degree. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Let me look up your records. What's your name? Olivia Thornton. Maiden name Olivia Hayes. There was typing on the other end, then a pause. I found you, Mrs. Thornton. You completed 2 years of the program before withdrawing in 1992. Is that correct? The year Derek was born, the year Richard told me he needed me at home, that the business was growing, that I could always finish later. That's correct. Well, the good news is that some of your credits may still be transferable, but you would need to retake the clinical portions and pass the licensing exam. It would probably take 2 to 3 years, depending on your schedule. At 2 to 3 years, I was 58 years old. By the time I finished, I would be 60 or 61. Too old to start a new career, Richard would say. Too old to be useful. But Richard wasn't here, and his voice in my head didn't get to decide anymore. Can you send me the enrollment information? I asked. Of course. What's your email? I gave her my address, my personal email, the one Richard didn't know about, the one I had created years ago just to have something that was mine. After I hung up, I sat in the kitchen and thought about the woman I used to be, the woman who wanted to be a nurse, who wanted to help people, who had dreams that extended beyond this house and this marriage. That woman had been buried for 34 years, smothered under Richard's expectations and my own fear. But she wasn't dead. I could feel her stirring somewhere deep inside me, waking up after a long sleep. Richard came home at 7. He was carrying a briefcase and a folder, a different folder, thicker than the one I had found in his desk. We need to talk, he said. So talk. He sat down across from me at the kitchen island. The same place we had sat last night when everything changed. The same granite counter, the same cold air, the same distance between us. I spoke to my lawyers today, he said. They prepared a proposal. He slid the folder across the counter. I didn't touch it. A proposal for what? For moving forward, quietly, without involving the courts or the police or anyone else. I opened the folder. Inside was a single document, 10 pages long, filled with legal language I didn't fully understand, but I understood enough. Richard was offering me a settlement, $500,000, paid out over 5 years. In exchange, I would sign a non-disclosure agreement, drop any claims against him, and agree to a quiet dissolution of the marriage. $500,000 for 34 years of my life, for 3 children, a career I gave up, an identity I lost. This is a joke, I said. It's generous, Olivia. More than generous. You could buy a small house, live comfortably. Comfortably, I laughed. It was not a nice laugh. Richard, you're worth $47 million. You have a secret son, a gambling addiction, and a police investigation with my name on it. And you're offering me $500,000? His jaw tightened. I'm offering you a way out, a clean break. No lawyers, no courts, no publicity, no publicity. I understood now. This wasn't about being fair. This was about protecting himself. You're scared. You're scared of what happens if this goes to court, if people find out what you've done. I'm trying to protect this family. This family? I pushed the folder back across the counter. You destroyed this family, Richard. You destroyed it the moment you signed my name on a gambling debt, the moment you had a child with another woman, the moment you decided I was too stupid to notice. He stood up. His face was red, his hands shaking. I had never seen him this angry before. Not the cold, controlled anger I was used to, but something hotter, more dangerous. Sign the agreement, Olivia. No, sign it, or I will make your life very difficult. More difficult than this? I gestured around the kitchen, at the expensive appliances, the marble counters, the emptiness. More difficult than being married to a man who treats me like furniture, who pays my sister to spy on me, who has a whole other family I never knew about. You have no idea what I'm capable of. Neither do you, Richard. I stood up and faced him. Neither do you. We stared at each other across the counter. The air between us was thick with 34 years of silence. 34 years of things I should have said and didn't. Finally, Richard picked up the folder and walked toward his office. You'll regret this, he said, without turning around. Maybe, I said, but I'd regret signing even more. He slammed the door. The sound echoed through the empty house. That night, I lay in the guest room bed and stared at the ceiling. I had no money, no job, no plan. My husband was threatening me. My son wouldn't return my calls. My sister had been spying on me for years, but for the first time in 34 years, I felt something that wasn't fear. I felt free. The next morning, I woke up to a notification on my phone, an email from Bank of Arizona. Dear Mrs. Thornton, we regret to inform you that your joint checking account has been closed effective immediately. All remaining funds have been transferred per the primary account holder's instructions. If you have questions, please contact our customer service department. I read the email 3 times, then I got out of bed, got dressed, and called Sandra Chen. He closed the account, I said. All of it, every penny. There was a pause. Then Sandra's voice, calm and steady. Good. Now we have evidence of financial abuse. Now we can really hurt him. I smiled. It was the first time I had smiled in days. Tell me what to do, I said, and she did. Sandra Chen's office smelled like coffee and old paper. It was 9 in the morning, and I had been sitting across from her desk for 20 minutes watching her flip through the documents I had brought, the forged credit application, the police report, the birth certificate, and now the bank statement showing that Richard had closed our joint account. This is excellent, she said, setting down the papers. Not for you, obviously, but for the case. How is losing all my money excellent? Sandra smiled. It was the same sharp smile I remembered from our first meeting, the one that made her look like a predator spotting prey, because it establishes a pattern of financial abuse. Your husband didn't just hide assets, he actively cut you off from funds you had legal access to. That's not just grounds for divorce, that's grounds for emergency spousal support, asset freezing, and potentially criminal charges. Criminal charges. I hadn't thought about that. I had been so focused on surviving, on getting through each day, that I hadn't considered what might happen to Richard if this went to court. What kind of criminal charges? Identity theft, for starters. He forged your signature on a credit application. That's a felony in Arizona. Then there's the fraud, using your identity as collateral for gambling debts, and depending on what else we find, there could be charges related to financial abuse, coercion, maybe even racketeering if his gambling connections go deep enough. I thought about Richard in a courtroom, Richard in handcuffs, Richard in a prison cell. The images felt unreal, like scenes from a movie about someone else's life. I don't want him in prison, I said slowly. I just want out. Sandra nodded. I understand, and we can negotiate for that. A settlement that keeps him out of criminal court in exchange for a fair division of assets. But first, we need leverage. We need to know everything. Everything? Everything he's hiding. The gambling debts, the mistress, the secret child. That's just what you found so far. Men like your husband don't stop at one secret. There's always more. She was right. I knew she was right. Richard had been lying to me for years, maybe decades. The birth certificate was proof of that. But what else was there? What else had I missed? How do we find out? I asked. Sandra opened her desk drawer and pulled out a business card. The name on it was Michael Torres, private investigator. Michael is the best in Phoenix, she said. He's discreet, thorough, and he knows how to find things that people want to stay hidden. I've already briefed him on your case. He can start today if you're ready. I took the card. The paper was thick and expensive, like everything else in Sandra's office, like everything else in the world Richard had kept me from. How much does he cost? $5,000 as a retainer. More if the investigation goes deep. $5,000. I had $43 in my wallet and a credit card that was probably already cancelled. I don't have that kind of money, I said. Richard took everything. Sandra's smile didn't waver. I know. That's why I'm fronting the cost. Consider it an investment in your case. When we win, and we will win, you can pay me back from the settlement. I stared at her. In 34 years, no one had ever offered to help me like this. No one had ever believed in me enough to risk their own money. Why? I asked. Why are you doing this? Sandra leaned back in her chair. For a moment, her sharp expression softened into something almost human. Because I was you, Mrs. Thornton. 20 years ago, I was married to a man who controlled every penny I earned, every decision I made, every breath I took. When I finally got out, I swore I would spend the rest of my career helping women like me, women like you. She stood up and extended her hand. So, are you ready to fight? I shook her hand. Her grip was firm and warm. I'm ready. Juliana and Beatrice arrived that evening. I picked them up from the airport in my car, the leased Mercedes that still had Richard's name on the registration. They came out of the terminal together, rolling matching suitcases, looking like the beautiful, successful women they had become without any help from their father. Juliana hugged me first. She was taller than me now, with Richard's dark hair and my mother's brown eyes. She smelled like airplane coffee and the lavender perfume she had worn since college. Mom, she said, her voice thick, I'm so sorry. I should have believed you. You didn't know, sweetheart. None of us knew. Beatrice hugged me next. She was smaller, softer, with my light hair, and a face that still looked young even at 27. She was crying before she even reached me. I'm going to kill him, she said into my shoulder. I'm going to actually kill him. No, you're not. We're going to do this the right way. We drove home in silence. The sun was setting over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was beautiful, the kind of sunset Richard and I used to watch together from the patio, back when I still believed in sunsets and marriages and happily ever after. At the house, I made dinner, pasta with garlic bread, the same meal I had made for family dinners when the girls were young. We sat at the kitchen island, the three of us, and I told them everything. About the phone call at 2:17 in the morning, about the forged documents and the police report, about Lucas, the 7-year-old half-brother they didn't know they had, about Vanessa, the woman Richard had been seeing for 8 years, about Marlene, who had been spying on me for money, about the bank account now empty, about the settlement offer, rejected. When I finished, Juliana and Beatrice sat in stunned silence. Beatrice was crying again, quietly. Juliana's face was pale, her jaw set in a hard line. 8 years, Juliana said finally. He's had another family for 8 years. Yes. And Aunt Marlene knew? She was helping him? Yes. Juliana stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over her wine glass. She walked to the window and stood there with her back to us, staring out at the dark yard. I talked to him, she said, her voice shaking. Last week, he called me to complain about you, about how you were being difficult and paranoid, and I believed him. I actually believed him, Juliana. No, Mom, don't make excuses for me. I should have known. I should have seen through him years ago. But I wanted so badly to believe that he was a good father, a good husband, that I ignored everything right in front of my face. She turned around. Her eyes were red, but she wasn't crying. She looked angry, angrier than I had ever seen her. What do you need? She asked. What can we do to help? I looked at my daughters, at Juliana's fierce determination, at Beatrice's quiet tears, and I felt something crack open in my chest. Love, maybe, or gratitude, or just the relief of not being alone anymore. I need you to trust me, I said, and I need you to stay out of this until I tell you otherwise. Your father is dangerous when he's cornered. I don't want him to hurt you too. Mom, we can handle. Please, Juliana, let me do this my way. They exchanged a look, the silent communication of sisters who had grown up together, who knew each other better than anyone. Okay, Beatrice said finally, but we're here, whatever you need, whenever you need it. I know, sweetheart, I know. The next morning, I drove to an address Michael Torres had texted me. A storage unit on the outskirts of Scottsdale, rented in Richard's name. Michael had found it in less than 24 hours. Your husband's been paying for it in cash for 6 years, he had said on the phone. Whatever's in there, he doesn't want anyone to know about it. The storage facility was the kind of place that advertised on late-night television. Cheap, anonymous, the sort of place where people kept things they wanted to forget. I pulled into the parking lot and sat in my car, staring at the row of orange doors. Unit 247. That was the number Michael had given me. I got out of the car. The morning air was cold, sharper than usual for Phoenix in March. I walked past units 240, 241, 242, my heart beating faster with each step. Unit 247 had a padlock on the door. Michael had warned me about that. I can't legally break in, he had said, but you're his wife. Arizona is a community property state. Technically, anything in that unit belongs to you too. I had brought bolt cutters. I didn't know where that version of me had come from, the version who bought bolt cutters at Home Depot and drove to storage units alone. But here she was. The lock broke with a sharp snap. I rolled up the metal door and stepped inside. The unit was small, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet, stacked with cardboard boxes and plastic bins. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight, sweeping it across the dusty space. The first box I opened contained financial documents, bank statements, tax returns, investment reports, all dating back 15 years. I flipped through them quickly, looking for anything unusual. The second box was worse. It contained photographs, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Photos of Vanessa at restaurants, at beaches, at Christmas parties. Photos of Lucas as a baby, as a toddler, as a little boy with Richard's eyes and Vanessa's smile. Photos of Richard holding Lucas on his shoulders, looking happier than I had ever seen him. I sat down on a dusty crate and stared at the photographs in my hands. 8 years of another life. 8 years of memories that didn't include me. The third box contained documents I didn't understand at first. Legal papers with names I didn't recognize. Transfers of money to accounts in the Cayman Islands. Contracts for properties I had never heard of. But one document stood out. Paperclipped to the front of a thick folder. It was a life insurance policy. $2 million taken out 5 years ago. The beneficiary was Vanessa Cole. Not me. Not our children. Vanessa. If Richard died, his mistress would get $2 million. His wife and legitimate children would get nothing. I photographed everything, every document, every photograph, every piece of evidence that proved Richard had been planning to leave me with nothing. My hands were shaking, but I kept going. When I was done, I put everything back exactly as I had found it. Then I closed the door, replaced the padlock with a new one I had bought, and drove home. That afternoon, I signed a document that Richard didn't know existed. Sandra Chen had prepared it, a formal complaint to the Arizona Attorney General's office, detailing Richard's identity theft, financial fraud, and suspected money laundering. The complaint didn't guarantee prosecution. That would be up to the AG's office, but it created a paper trail. It put Richard's name in a file somewhere, waiting. Once you sign this, Sandra had warned me, there's no going back. He'll find out eventually. And when he does, he'll come after you with everything he has. I thought about the life insurance policy with Vanessa's name on it. I thought about the photographs of Lucas, the son Richard had loved in secret while ignoring the children we had together. I thought about 34 years of silence, of obedience, of making myself small so that Richard could feel big. I signed the complaint. What happens now? I asked. Sandra took the document and placed it in a folder marked Thornton, confidential. Now we wait. The AG's office will review the complaint and decide whether to investigate. In the meantime, Michael keeps digging and we prepare for the divorce filing. When? 2 weeks. I want to have everything in place before Richard knows what's coming. 2 weeks. 14 days to gather evidence, build a case, and prepare for the fight of my life. I stood up to leave. At the door, I turned back. Sandra, thank you for believing me. She looked up from her desk. For a moment, that sharp smile softened again. Thank yourself, Mrs. Thornton. You're the one who finally decided to fight. I walked out of her office and into the bright Arizona sun. My phone buzzed. A text from Derek. Mom, we need to talk. Can you meet me tomorrow? Just us. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, yes, name the place. Derek chose a coffee shop in Tempe, 20 miles from our house. It was the kind of place college students went to study. Exposed brick walls, mismatched furniture, the smell of espresso, and ambition. Not the kind of place Richard's son would normally be seen. I arrived 10 minutes early. I ordered a black coffee I didn't want and sat at a table near the window, watching the door. Derek walked in at exactly 2 o'clock. He was wearing a suit. He always wore suits now, ever since he started working for Richard, but his tie was loose and his face was pale. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He saw me and stopped. For a moment, I thought he might turn around and leave, but then he walked over, pulled out the chair across from me, and sat down. Mom, he said. Derek. We stared at each other. My son was 33 years old, but right now he looked like the little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, seeking comfort from a mother he trusted completely. I don't know where to start, he said. Start anywhere. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like Richard that it made my chest ache. Dad called me last week, after you found those documents. He told me you were having a breakdown. He said you were paranoid, delusional, that you had gone through his private files and invented some story about fraud and secret children. And you believed him? I didn't know what to believe. You have to understand, Mom. Dad has always been. He's always been Dad. Successful, confident, in control. And you've always been quiet. Accommodating. I thought maybe the stress of everything had gotten to you. I took a sip of my coffee. It was bitter and cold. What changed your mind? Derek reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He slid it across the table toward me. I found this yesterday, in Dad's office at the dealership. He asked me to file some documents, and I saw my name on something I didn't recognize. I unfolded the paper. It was a loan agreement dated 2 years ago for $340,000. The borrower was listed as Derek Allen Thornton. The collateral was a property in Scottsdale that I had never heard of. The interest rate was 18%, the kind of rate loan sharks charged. I never signed this, Derek said. His voice was shaking. I never agreed to any loan. I didn't even know this property existed, but that's my signature, Mom, or something that looks exactly like it. I stared at the document. Richard had done to Derek exactly what he had done to me. Forged his signature, used his identity, buried him in debt he didn't know about. There's more, Derek said. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through something. I spent all night going through the company records. Dad gave me access years ago for work. I never really looked at anything beyond what I needed, but last night I looked. He turned the phone toward me. On the screen was a spreadsheet, rows and rows of numbers, transfers, payments. Dad has been moving money out of the dealerships for years, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Sometimes sometimes millions, going to accounts I've never seen before. Some of them are in the Cayman Islands, some are in names I don't recognize, and some," he paused, his jaw tightening, "some are in the name of a woman called Vanessa Cole. You found her." "I found more than her." Derek's eyes met mine. "Mom, I found the birth certificate. Lucas, my half-brother. I have a half-brother I never knew about." I reached across the table and took my son's hand. His fingers were cold, trembling. "I know, sweetheart. I found it too. Why didn't you tell me?" "I tried. You wouldn't answer my calls." Derek's face crumpled. For a moment, he wasn't a 33-year-old lawyer in an expensive suit. He was just a boy who had discovered his father was a stranger. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I should have listened to you. I should have—" "It's okay. You didn't know." "No, it's not okay." He pulled his hand back and wiped his eyes. "I believed him. I took his side. I let him convince me that you were the problem, when all along he was the one lying to everyone. Derek, your father is very good at lying. He's had 34 years of practice. But I'm his son. I should have seen through it. I should have protected you." I looked at my son, at his red eyes, his trembling hands, his face full of guilt and grief, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Forgiveness. "You're here now," I said. "That's what matters." We talked for 2 hours. I told Derek everything. The phone call at 2:17, the forged documents, the storage unit, the life insurance policy naming Vanessa as beneficiary. I told him about Sandra Chen and Michael Torres, about the complaint to the Attorney General, about the divorce I was planning. Derek listened without interrupting. When I finished, he sat in silence for a long moment. "What do you need from me?" he asked finally. "I need you to testify. When this goes to court, I need you to tell the truth about what your father did. The forged loan, the money laundering, everything. You want me to testify against my own father. I want you to tell the truth. Whatever that means." Derek stared at his coffee cup. I could see him wrestling with it. The loyalty he had felt toward Richard his whole life. The betrayal he was only now beginning to understand. "He's going to destroy me," he said quietly. "If I testify against him, he'll fire me. He'll cut me off. He'll make sure I never work in this town again. Probably. And you're asking me to do it anyway. I'm asking you to do what's right, but I'll understand if you can't." Derek looked up at me. His eyes were clearer now, harder. Something had changed in him during our conversation. Something had broken, and something else had begun to grow. "I'll do it," he said. "I'll testify. Whatever you need." I reached across the table and took his hand again. "Thank you, Derek. I know how hard this is." "It's not hard, Mom. It's the easiest decision I've ever made." He squeezed my hand. "I just wish I had made it sooner." We drove back to the house together, Derek following in his car. I had invited him for dinner. A real dinner, the kind we used to have before Richard turned our family into a performance. But when we pulled into the driveway, something was wrong. Richard's Mercedes was parked at an angle, one wheel on the lawn, the driver's door hanging open. The front door of the house was open too, light spilling out onto the porch. "Stay here," I told Derek. "Mom, stay here." I walked up the front steps and into the house. The lights were on in every room. The kitchen was empty. The living room was empty. Richard's office door was closed. I pushed it open. Richard was sitting at his desk, papers scattered everywhere. He looked up when I entered, and I saw something I had never seen on his face before. Fear. "You filed a complaint," he said. His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "With the Attorney General. You're trying to destroy me. I'm trying to protect myself." "Protect yourself?" He stood up, knocking over his chair. "I gave you everything. A house, a family, a life. And this is how you repay me? You gave me nothing, Richard. You took everything and called it giving. I made you—" He was walking toward me now, his face red, his hands shaking. "Without me, you would be nothing. You, a nurse in some clinic, wiping old people and counting pills. I made you into something. You made me into a prisoner." "A prisoner?" He laughed, an ugly, broken sound. "You lived in a mansion. You had cars, clothes, jewelry. You never worked a day in your life. I worked every day. I raised your children. I managed your house. I smiled at your business partners and pretended not to notice when you came home smelling like other women. That was work, Richard. That was the hardest work I've ever done." He was standing right in front of me now, close enough that I could smell the whiskey on his breath. His eyes were wild, unfocused. "I'm not going to let you ruin me," he said. "I'm not going to let you take what's mine. It was never just yours. It was ours, and you threw it away." The front door opened. Derek's voice echoed through the house. "Mom, is everything okay?" Richard's head snapped toward the sound. His face twisted. "You brought him here? You turned my own son against me?" "He turned himself, Richard, when he found the documents you forged with his name." For a moment, Richard went completely still. Then something in him seemed to crack. "Derek wouldn't betray me. Derek is loyal. Derek is in the doorway," I said. "Why don't you ask him yourself?" Richard turned. Derek was standing at the office door, his face pale but determined. "Dad," Derek said, "we need to talk." The conversation lasted less than 10 minutes. Derek confronted Richard with the forged loan agreement, the money transfers, the secret accounts. Richard denied everything at first, claimed the documents were fake, that Derek had misunderstood, that I had manipulated him. But Derek didn't back down. He stood his ground, asking question after question, refusing to accept Richard's lies. And then Richard's face changed. It went from red to white in a matter of seconds. He put a hand on his chest. He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. "Dad?" Derek stepped forward. "Dad, are you okay?" Richard's knees buckled. He grabbed the edge of his desk, missed, and fell to the floor. "Call 911, I said. My voice sounded calm, distant, like it belonged to someone else. "Derek, call 911 now." The ambulance arrived in 7 minutes. The paramedics loaded Richard onto a stretcher, while Derek and I stood in the driveway watching. "Is he going to be okay?" Derek asked. "I don't know." At St. Joseph's Hospital, they took Richard into the cardiac unit immediately. A doctor came out after an hour, a young woman with tired eyes and a clipboard. Mrs. Thornton, I'm Dr. Patterson. Your husband has had a massive heart attack. We've stabilized him for now, but he needs emergency bypass surgery. The procedure is risky. There's a chance he won't survive. I felt Derek's hand on my shoulder. What do you need from me? I asked. Dr. Patterson looked down at her clipboard. We need authorization to proceed. As his spouse, you have medical power of attorney. Without your signature, we can't operate. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Somewhere down the hall, a machine beeped steadily. Derek's hand tightened on my shoulder. Mrs. Thornton, Dr. Patterson said gently, do you authorize the procedure? I thought about 34 years of marriage, about the lies, the betrayal, the secret son, about the forged documents and the emptied bank accounts and the life insurance policy with Vanessa's name on it. I thought about the man I had loved once, a long time ago, before I knew who he really was, and I thought about the choice in front of me. Mrs. Thornton, Dr. Patterson repeated, do you authorize the procedure? I looked at Derek. His face was pale. His eyes filled with something I couldn't read. Then I looked back at the doctor. I need a moment, I said. I need to think. I stood in the hospital corridor for a long time. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Nurses walked past, their soft-soled shoes squeaking on the linoleum. Somewhere down the hall, a woman was crying. The smell of antiseptic and coffee hung in the air like a fog. Derek stood beside me, silent, waiting. Juliana and Beatrice had arrived 20 minutes ago, summoned by panicked phone calls. They sat in the waiting room, holding hands, their faces pale with shock. Dr. Patterson had given me 1 hour to decide, 1 hour to determine whether the man who had lied to me for 34 years would live or die. I walked to the window at the end of the corridor. The sun was setting over Phoenix, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Beautiful, I thought. The same sunset I had watched 1,000 times from the patio of the house that was never really mine. My phone buzzed. A text from Sandra Chen. Just heard. Whatever you decide, I support you. Call me when you're ready. I put the phone away. Mom? Derek's voice came from behind me. Whatever you decide, I'll understand. I turned to face him. My son, my boy, stood in the harsh hospital light, looking more lost than I had ever seen him. He had spent his whole life trying to please his father, trying to earn Richard's approval, trying to be worthy of a man who was never worthy of him. What would you do? I asked. Derek was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I would save him. Not because he deserves it, but because you deserve to be free of him. Really free. And you can't be free if you let him die. I thought about that. About freedom and what it really meant. If Richard died on the operating table, I would be a widow. I would inherit whatever was left of his estate after the creditors finished picking it apart. I would never have to see his face again, hear his voice again, feel his hands on my shoulders like warnings. But I would also carry his death with me forever. Every morning, I would wake up knowing that I had the power to save him and chose not to use it. Every night, I would wonder if I had done the right thing. That wasn't freedom. That was a different kind of prison. I walked back to Dr. Patterson's office. She looked up when I entered, her tired eyes searching my face. Mrs. Thornton, have you made a decision? Yes, I said. I authorized the procedure. Dr. Patterson nodded and picked up her phone to call the surgical team. But I have conditions, I added. She paused. Conditions? When my husband wakes up, if he wakes up, I want to be the first person he sees, alone, before anyone else talks to him. Can you arrange that? Dr. Patterson studied me for a moment. Then she nodded. I can arrange that. The surgery lasted 7 hours. I sat in the waiting room with Derek, Juliana, and Beatrice, drinking bad coffee and staring at the walls. We didn't talk much. There wasn't much to say. At 3:47 in the morning, Dr. Patterson came out. She looked exhausted, her scrubs stained with sweat, but she was smiling. He made it, she said. The surgery was successful. He's in recovery now. He'll need weeks of rehabilitation, but barring complications, he should survive. Juliana burst into tears. Beatrice hugged her. Derek just stared at the floor, his jaw tight. When can I see him? I asked. He should be awake in a few hours. I'll have a nurse come get you. I nodded. Thank you, Dr. Patterson, for everything. She looked at me with something like curiosity in her eyes. You're welcome, Mrs. Thornton. I hope things work out. I hope so too, I thought, but I didn't say it out loud. They came for me at 6:15 in the morning. Richard was in a private room at the end of the cardiac unit. Machines beeped around him, monitoring his heart, his breathing, his blood pressure. He looked small in the hospital bed, smaller than I had ever seen him. His face was grey, his hair limp, his hands folded on his chest like a corpse. But his eyes were open, and when he saw me, something flickered in them. Fear, maybe, or hope, or just the animal recognition of a predator seeing its prey. Olivia, he whispered. His voice was hoarse, barely audible. I pulled a chair up to his bedside and sat down. I was still wearing the clothes from yesterday. The same jeans, the same sweater, the same flat shoes. I hadn't slept in over 24 hours. I didn't care. Richard, I said, we need to talk. I almost died. I know. I authorized the surgery. You're welcome. He blinked. I could see him processing that information, trying to figure out what it meant, what angle I was playing. Why? He asked. Because I wanted you to live. Not for you. For me. For our children. For the chance to look you in the eye and tell you exactly what I think of you. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my wedding ring. I'd been wearing it for 34 years. It had left a permanent indent on my finger, a groove worn into the flesh by decades of loyalty and silence. I set it on the table beside his bed. I'm leaving you, I said. The divorce papers will be filed this week. My lawyer has evidence of everything. The forged documents, the gambling debts, the secret accounts, the life insurance policy naming Vanessa as beneficiary. If you fight me, all of it goes public. Your business, your reputation, your legacy, everything you've you've spent your life building will be destroyed. Richard's face went even paler. Olivia, please. I'm not finished. My voice was calm, steady. I had practiced this moment in my head 1,000 times. Derek is going to testify against you. He found the loan you forged in his name. He found the money transfers, the offshore accounts, everything. He's done protecting you. Derek wouldn't. Derek already has. He's in the waiting room right now, ready to go to the Attorney General's office as soon as it opens. I leaned forward. You have two choices, Richard. You can accept a settlement, a fair one, not the insulting offer you made last week, and walk away quietly, or you can fight me and watch everything burn. Richard stared at me. His monitors beeped faster, his heart rate climbing. You can't do this, he said. I built everything. I earned everything. You were nothing without me. I was everything without you. I just didn't know it yet. I stood up. The wedding ring glinted on the table, catching the fluorescent light. My lawyer will be in touch, I said. Get well soon, Richard. You have a lot of decisions to make. I walked toward the door. Olivia. His voice stopped me, weak and desperate. Please, I love you. I've always loved you. I turned around. For a moment, I almost believed him. Almost. You know what my mother used to say about me? I asked. She said I was the one who always settled for scraps, the one who never fought for what she deserved. Richard said nothing. She was right, I continued. For 34 years, I settled for scraps. I accepted your lies, your cruelty, your betrayal. I made myself small so you could feel big. But not anymore, Richard. I'm done settling. I opened the door. Goodbye, Richard. I hope you find whatever you're looking for, but you won't find it with me. I walked out without looking back. 3 weeks later, Richard signed the settlement. Sandra Chen got me everything I asked for. Half of the dealership empire, the house in Paradise Valley, the vacation home in Sedona, and a lump sum of $12 million. Richard kept the rest, what was left of it, after the creditors and the lawyers took their share. Derek took over as CEO of Thornton Automotive. His first act was to fire every executive who had helped Richard hide his gambling debts. His second act was to change the company name. Juliana and Beatrice flew back to their lives in Seattle and Boston, but they called every week now, sometimes twice. We talked about everything and nothing, the weather, their jobs, their partners, their dreams. We talked like a family that was finally learning how to be one. Marlene called once, a week after the settlement was announced. She didn't apologize. She didn't explain. She just asked if I could lend her money, just until she got back on her feet. I said no. Then I said something else, something I had been waiting to say for years. You remember what Mom used to say about me, Marlene? That I always took the scraps? That I never fought for what I deserved? Silence on the other end. Well, here's what I have to say about you. You were always jealous of my marriage, my house, my life, and instead of building something of your own, you sold me out for $4,500 a month. That's what my sister was worth, less than a used car payment. I hung up before she could respond. It felt good, better than I expected. The last loose end was Vanessa. I didn't confront her. I didn't need to. Michael Torres had discovered that Richard had stopped paying her rent 3 months ago when his gambling debts finally caught up with him. The apartment in Scottsdale was being repossessed. The private school tuition for Lucas had bounced. Vanessa called Richard's hospital room 17 times in the first week. He never answered. I heard through Derek that she had moved back to Nevada to live with her mother. She had taken Lucas with her. I wondered sometimes what that little boy would think when he grew up, about his father, about the life he almost had, about the family that was never really his. But I didn't wonder for long. I had my own life to build now. On the first day of June, I enrolled in the Phoenix College School of Nursing. The classes were hard. The other students were younger. Most of them could have been my children. The instructors were demanding, the hours were long, and my brain wasn't as sharp as it used to be. But every morning, I woke up in a house that was mine. I drove a car that was in my name. I made decisions that no one could override or second guess or punish me for. I was 58 years old, and I was finally free. On the last page of my nursing textbook, I found a quote that someone had written in pencil years ago. The wound is the place where the light enters you. I didn't know who had written it or what they had been through, but I understood what they meant. For 34 years I had been wounded. By Richard, by Marlene, by my own silence and fear. But those wounds had cracked me open. They had let the light in. And now, finally, I could see. My phone buzzed. A text from Derek. Dinner Sunday? Juliana and Beatrice are flying in. We want to celebrate your first semester. I smiled. The first real smile in months. I'll be there, I typed back. I'll bring dessert. Then I closed my textbook, turned off the light, and went to sleep. Tomorrow I would wake up early. Tomorrow I would study and work and build a life that was entirely my own. Tomorrow I would keep fighting, but tonight I rested. I had earned it.